If you would allow me to set the scene, light richly decorated the divide in the Alps, falling in an impressive scene of jagged, foreboding boulders sitting in fields of emerald blades of grass. Thin strip of blooming vegetation that rapidly thinned with the elevation, further divided by a hard line of faded asphalt and white paint, bare feature that could seemingly not decide if it had conquered the mountains or was native to them all along. The Romans that had previously used the Julier to transport goods across their empire didn't dream of the kind of machines that would one day populate their frontier trails. Alone, Bentley Continental GTC W12 convertible in a distinct, glossy gunmetal gray sat on the side of the road. Its roof folded despite the stabbing cold. Its bullish form loomed over the road, the afternoon sun casting a long shadow eastward. It was empty. Its driver leisurely strolled among the wild edelweiss and alpine roses that were still damp with the dew, further desecrating them with cigarette ash, drinking in the view in silent wonder as his vintage driving boots crunched across the grass. A breeze picked up, his black scarf tugging at his neck as his navy blue winter jacket. A few golden blonde hairs peeked under a black beanie, one familiar to military men working in less than temperate environments. Checked his tag he were Racer Professional, its glossy blue dial glistening in the Swiss sun. Read 3 o'clock p.m. Then a notification from on his cell phone. Hmm. Strode over to the road, flicked his Parisienne from his black leather driving glove, and snuffed it with his boot, and marched back to his Bentley. He unzipped and deposited his jacket in the back seat, taking a fresh breath of the thin, freezing mountain air to clear his lungs of smoke before reaching for his gun. While their PPK-S and matte stainless, fitted with a Gemtech Aurora 2 suppressor, sat in a deep black leather Galco Miami shoulder holster. The man press-checked the pistol, affirming that the 380 ACP round was properly seated, then clicked the safety to decocked it before sliding it back into its place. Snatched up a black plate carrier vest lined with Kevlar inserts and loaded with extended 40-round mags labeled Chris USA, slipping it over a long-sleeved baby blue blade collar polo. Next came a Sig Sauer P26R with a suppressor and Streamlight in addition, comfortably in its Mitch Rosen outside the waistband hip holster cut for its long silencer. Strapping it on around his legs, he performed the same ritual he did with his Walther, confirming the status of the 9mm round in its chamber, checking its tritium green dot extended iron sights and slipping it back in. Swinging his jacket over his broad shoulders and fitting his well-built arms through its sleeves, a Bell Rogue helmet with its terribly ugly muzzle removed, and a pair of vintage steel-lined, dark-tinted driving goggles wrapped around it, normally used for motorcycling, but the man found it served its purpose well here, came atop its beanie and its strap secured. All that was left was a B&T Grasshopper Mouse 9 SDG submachine gun, its playful branding belying a stark monolith of a weapon one had been professionally acquainted with in a previous situation that had been all too recent for his liking. It had been fitted with a Streamlight ProTac on its left side, a sling, a stub foregrip, and a Trijicon MR with red dot sight. He press-checked it all the same and slung it over his chest. He checked his glove box. Next to several MOT documents, the operating manual, a bottle of Dexedrine pills, the dreaded stuff he sometimes took when he had nothing in him left to give, which he gladly skipped this time, and a silver flask filled with Jim Beam bourbon, which he had also skipped, was a Cheska Dubrovka VZ83 machine pistol and 380 ACP, with a holster fixed to the ceiling of the glove box, along with several magazines in a holder. He mused, wondering what kind of hell he'd need to get into to draw that thing before closing the glove box. An earpiece crackled to life. White Knight, Black Queen, and a pair of clones headed Estwood. ETA 2 minutes and counting. He spoke in suave and clear, received pronunciation. White Knight receives and acknowledges. He took a moment to adjust his rearview mirror, contemplating the reflection of grayish-blue eyes that had seen too much in so little time. At that, he adjusted his scarf to fall over his nose and mouth, lowered his driving goggles, and ignited the Bentley with a welcome growl. Predator's gaze drifted across the road in front of him, spying a pair of vehicles traveling at a rather fast pace across the lonely highway. A Mercedes S-Class in silver, flanked by a 300 SL in the same color. The man waited. seconds, minutes, anticipating, creeping up and flaring as the cars drove ever farther from him. Then all of a sudden, the rumbling of the 6-liter Volkswagen W12 turned into a howling roar, mud kicking up into rooster tails from the rear tires, sudden screeching and smoke as they met cold tarmac. Speedometer leaped as the brute of a car launched forward, its chilling wind competing with the lion's roar of the vehicle's power plant and audibility as the driver felt his scarf whipping around his neck. His prey took notice and accelerated, and what they had in speed they had to sacrifice in to keep from colliding each other from one another on the side of the road, and suddenly became highly serpentine. He had been counting on this. Back the car slid left as he suddenly pumped the gas, tires howling. He accelerated through the turn and whipped around the next one just the same, gradually gaining on the 300 SL. Now, unfortunately, for all it's worth, this is all that I have for you today at the moment, as this is a work in progress. Hello, it's me, Felix Valenti, back in the new year, streaming again. And recently my autism boiled over. I wanted to talk. I wanted to talk with you guys. And it's a niche topic. It's Felix going again. Felix going again at his autism ramblings. This is indeed an attempt at a Bond script that I had written. This is, I think, this is why I included the term readers rants in the This is why I included the term readers rants in all this, because, well, I guess it would be kind of a bit of a novel, although I had also intended for it to be like kind of a script. And so, what's this random, like, this American Zoomer in the 21st century talking about this fucking book series written by some British guy in the 50s. Well, it's not more. It's more than a book series. It's a movie series that had its own set of runs quite frequently. And I feel like it is a niche interest that I've had since I was younger. A lot of people get the average age of people who like the Bond series is gradually increasing. I don't think there are too many people who are younger than me who are into the films as into the films as I am, into the series as a whole as I am. And I think it started twofold, I would say. The first was, in one way, in the literary side, was this book called Hitler's Angel. While this is not directly related to Bond or anything, but it was a spy novel. It was something I was interested in at the time, World War II history, and, well, it was intriguing. It was a young adult novel, so it was geared towards me. I read it in elementary school, but I found it entertaining enough to me for it to be like, the story's material still held up for a while. And it was the author, William Osborne, who was a screenwriter, who he also wrote another World War II youth novel. But my main focus for this stream is his other thing, which was the script for GoldenEye. If you're familiar, the 1995 legendary classic by now, that I'm sure some of you might have seen if you're old enough for that sort of thing. If you were indeed a millennial who saw the Gulf War, I'm sure you saw that movie when it in theaters. But it was that got me interested. The other half was it came about, I think, from my dad. It was my dad. He loves the movies as much as I do, and he loves the movies as much as I do. And my introduction to the movies was doing homework late at night downstairs, or like eating dinner late downstairs while he was watching his movies and doing whatever. Sometimes, and I would see snippets of this certain kind of movie he'd sometimes watch, always focused on some kind of protagonist. Often used to be they were always often British, um, operating like some kind of action hero operating in austere environments. Always depended on where they were, and while and I think it all came at a rush at some point. It was my introductions included he was driving a car down Las Vegas through Fremont Street in Las Vegas, a dark red Mustang that became a fixture of like my idea of the most beautiful car in the world. Sometimes it would be a bit more modern. He would be on a hovercraft chase in North Korea, and one of them on one Thanksgiving morning, he showed me this stuff from the BBC. This particular shot from the BBC. Where was it? There we go. It was this opening scene of the Spy Who Loved Me, from this movie. And as you and like it like the interest quickly like spiraled into its own thing. Into its own thing. It wasn't just fed by my dad. It wasn't just fed by nostalgia. I wanted to see these movies. It was, while I don't necessarily think I bond with him as strongly over it now, it definitely was a point that it was when I was younger. When it was cooler, when it was more when perhaps there were lesser other relevant franchises. This was one of them that connected us, that helped us. And I think that's how a lot of the interest in this series starts. It's introduced by a dad watching it, his son or his kid comes along and decides to watch it with him. And they were the most violent and sexual a PG rated movie could get. So, that's that's how they went. And this was the entrance point for a lot of I think that's the entrance point for a lot of people at the time. You'd catch late night TV interviews with people like Pierce Brosnan or Daniel Craig. It was Daniel Craig. Over Quantum of Solace and Casino Royale. Skyfall in 2012. Skyfall had just came out, and that was technically, in a way, the first Bond movie to come out in my lifetime. I was born in 2003. Casino Royale came out in 2006, and I think Quantum of Solace in 2008. I think that came out in 2008. Where's that? He sent me an article that I will be looking for. Quantum of Solace came out in 2008, and then finally Skyfall in 2012. And Skyfall was a pretty major entrance for me into what this was. I like it was, and it is really the ultimate. And to go into, I guess, why I like as the film says itself, a sexist, misogynist dinosaur, a relic of a Cold War, it's both, like, all of these movies, all of these novels, even the games, they're time capsules. They're like both the escapist, fantastical elements, it pulls you away from the monotony of life and thrusts you into this over-the-top world where anything can happen, where a lot of things can happen. A world much like our own, but yet was so different in character. So it could be dark, it could be vibrant, it could be violent, it could be glorious, that kind of thing. They could be detective novels, they could be adventure stories, they could be action, they could be pure action movies, they could be suspense thrillers. Some of them even could be love stories. And you know what? All of it comes from this one franchise. All this comes from one character. And James Bond isn't much of a good person. He did all this. He did all that. He did all that. And you know what? I don't care. He's both of its time and timeless, and that's, I think, a transcendent element. Ian Fleming wrote this character Ian Fleming wrote this character in a time immediately in the post-war of World War II, in the like the late 40s, the early 1950s, when it was all the world was still recovering from World War II, and it's gradually accepting that they are in fact a new world war, a Cold War. Britain is still rebuilding from the Blitz. America is experiencing a bit of a high, but it's interested in taking in everything, like a lot of foreign things at the time, and is of course on the brink of war with the Soviet Union. And most of Europe is still rebuilding from the effects of the Nazis and all that. And what better? And I think there is no more a character more quintessential to come out of the era than Bond, than Commander James Bond 007 of the Military Intelligence Section 6 of the British government. And I feel like it's there is no better a character to come out of the time of post-war Britain than Bond. The image of that, of a hardened of a man who would cut his teeth on war and is preparing for the next one in the best way he can via the intelligence service. And these basically became the backbone of the spy genre, of the I guess the spy action genre. The idea of there's always some kind of world crisis going on at a select moment, and the military is too slow to respond. Who do we send in? This one hero, this one hero on a mission to save the day. And I think the idea of that is constantly within like it extends from here to everywhere. The basic concept, it's not new. It wasn't new when Bond came out, but it was certainly a method of escape. And you know what, for being an almost transgressive pulp novel such a transgressive pulp novel in the 50s, I think it works really well. Anyways, so I think I'm gonna pull up an article that my dad sent me, but in the meanwhile, I will continue to ramble. There is a certain essence. Every one of these movies. Every one of these movies. Where do I find the list? Every one of these is a time capsule of the era. It was like Sean Connery's was evocative of the 1960s. Moore's was evocative of the swinging 70s in the UK. Dalton's encompassed the attempt to reinvent the series in the 80s, in the edgier 80s, and like they nailed the golden formula with Brosnan, and the modernization of the Connery concept in the 90s, in the king of movies. I feel like 1995 was the king of movies. You had Heat, you had a lot of other stuff, and you had GoldenEye, and you had GoldenEye for sure. And then we had the post 9/11 series of the Daniel Craig movies. While they're not my favorite, and they were the one that introduced me into the series, and they were the ones that I grew up with, so to speak. Of course, I liked previous movies. Like Connery is still, in my opinion, the best Bond, followed by Brosnan, Dalton, later Moore, later Lazenby, Moore, and then Craig. Craig is at the bottom, but it's how it is. And where do I find it? But yeah, I think this is what I get for not doing notes or not doing a script. But what? Where is that? Let me pull it up on let me Hold on. I am stuttering a bit. My bad. But yeah, it's I have a screen test. But I think this was a certain result of a lot of factors that came about a lot of factors that came about from the release of a certain recent the most recent entry into the movies was No Time to Die. And even 4 years ago, I think it still rocks me a bit. Like it's because of, I guess, horse like it's this it's a love hate with the movie with No Time to Die. Like I didn't want to focus solely on one movie, sol solely on one movie. I didn't want to focus solely on one movie, but this will be the most relevant in a way to the way, like, the reasons why I wrote that why I tried to write All You Need Is Forever, and why I tried to write why I tried to write that. And it's because well, it wasn't necessarily the most popular amongst the most diehard of fans, and I think that, like, there's a close reason why. Spoiler: they flipped the formula on its head. They made Bond retire. They gave the 007 moniker to someone else, and I think it could have been like they gave like they introduced a family element where he has kids. He never, like, Ian Fleming never gave him a child, I don't think. Well, he might have hinted at one, but the series technically ended from there. But he wouldn't be the kind of character to stick around, to settle. He's not the kind of character to settle down or stick around. And this leads into what kind of what kind of people are we looking into for the next things, for the next kinds of movies, and what kinds of, like, because, well, I guess the biggest spoiler for the uninitiated is that, well, Bond dies at the end of the movie, which in a very unfitting and unceremonious sort of way that everyone hated. Now, for all it's worth, I think I don't have quite examples to pull up, and I am restricting my use of the search bar because I don't wanna stall this VOD. I don't wanna, like, if in case I slip something up. But the cinematography in this movie was genuinely great. The cinematography in this movie wasn't the cinematography in this movie was indeed great. And they just didn't pick the right writers. They didn't pick the right people to write it. And I think part of it is a result of because Craig himself, like, it's no secret that Craig himself didn't want to be James Bond anymore. Either he hated the character, he hated playing the character, whatever. That's his problem now. But I guess he kind of brought it on himself and brought it on a lot of people in the way of, I mean, like, Roger Moore was a pacifist in real life, yeah. Yeah, he had no problem playing possibly the most deadly version of Bond. Um, but I think it was a lot of Craig's spite, and Barbara Broccoli, for those who don't know, she's the CEO of Eon Productions, who basically owns Bond in its entirety. I think her kowtowing to, like, their demands, and, like, we need to follow a modern audience, and you've heard it all before. We like the myth of the modern audience, and the idea of, well, we the myth of the modern audience, and, we couldn't we didn't want to, we want to modernize him for the new era, but, it's not something that necessarily should be modernized. Like, again, the character is meant to be both a time capsule and timeless. And I think this was written as the result of a lot of different stresses, a lot of, like, why did I say stresses? because, well, it just results from this movie, Bond's death, the continuation of this in the modern era, everything being questioned, everything being thrown into question by this movie. A lot of people are assuming that the franchise died after this and might have left. But a lot of people are envisioning a reboot set entirely in the 60s or the 50s or the 60s, accurate to the books, and filmed in black and white. I don't agree with that, because in many ways, as much of a failure this was, cinematography wise and aesthetics wise, um, this is like No Time to Die, Skyfall, and Spectre were proof that a modern Bond movie could work in the modern era, and that's why I set this in the modern era. As you note by the use of modern guns, modern tech, the modern car. Although there's always that vintage feel that comes about it, which is why I chose the Bell helmet, the driving goggles, the scarf, and the convertible. All those elements that I wanted to keep up. And I think it's by the elements of the late, like, I guess this is my cue to complain about the Craig era. For all of its, like, the beauty that it is cinematographically, I guess, so to speak. Where is that? In terms of cinematography, most of these like the Craigs are, like, besides the Brosnan ones, the Craigs are possibly the best looking. The Craigs are the best looking movies in the series, next to the Connerys and the Connery and the Dalton movies. But it had a really good visual style. But it's just, who's script wise, it wasn't really that good. And what I wanted to capture in writing All You Need Is Forever, at least what I could from the opening, is that sort of essence from Fleming. Now, this is where I go into talk about Ian Fleming. Do I necessarily agree with all of his? Do I necessarily approve of all of his social views of the time? And, well, they were the 1950s. He was a guy born and raised in the 1920s and lived through World War II. It'd be natural for him to have those views. That's how he wrote it. That's how he wrote. That's how he wrote the series. And Fleming was a journalist. He was a journalist and he served in the British Navy, the Royal Navy during World War II. And after that, and he was part of he led 30 Commando during World War II, which was a special forces unit that hit Nazi Germany and Nazi occupied Europe several times. And he was in fact a consultant on a lot of that, which he was an intelligence consultant on a lot of that. And he was also, like, there's so many elements of this series that, and I think I owe it to him, because while I don't remember exact details, I have read the original Casino Royale and Live and Let Die. I have read the original Casino Royale and Live and Let Die, like when I was younger. While I can't remember exact details from them, I will say they deeply affected my writing style. This, and of course, I guess who I consider the modern Ian Fleming, Tom Clancy, who wrote the source of the modern techno thriller with Jack Ryan. And I think both of those combined, alongside influences like Hideo Kojima from Metal Gear, who takes Bond a lot, like James Bond partially inspired the Metal Gear series. Elements of those seeped into my writing, and that hyper-autistic fixation on detail that Fleming brought into his stories. While I seek to capture that, while I can't mimic his writing, and it's always going to be my own, I can't help but admire the way he wrote everything. Intensely descriptive of every single thing that he put to the page. This is why we know the brand of Bond's shoes and Bond's suits and kind of shit that he eats. well, I wouldn't call it shit. He ate a lot of eggs, which is, I think, quite appetizing. But it was it stems from him, and I wanted to recapture elements of that while still keeping it in the modern era fully. It doesn't like keeping that like modernizing elements of the series and making it a little bit more believable, but still keeping those fantastical aspects that we've been missing. That we've been missing since maybe the Brosnan era, I think. And going into that, going but yeah, that's why I decided to write it. And I guess because of the idea of the future of the franchise, we don't know what's going on. We don't know who's going to play the next Bond. we and like there's conflicts between Eon Productions, which owns the series, and Amazon, which is now their parent company. James Bond film stall after Barbara Broccoli clashed with Amazon Studios, report claims. Of course, we know everything is with everything going on. Wrapped up a stint in 007 after 5 films in 2021's No Time to Die, and Barbara Broccoli with Michael G. Wilson, who oversee the Bond estate, have not confirmed who will be taking the role next. However, they did reveal last month that the films will change in a new direction when the lead actor is announced. And I hope it's a return to form, because ideally that's what I'm looking for. And I feel like there's a certain thing about the franchises I like. I get into Star Wars just as Disney bought it. I get into Fallout just as Bethesda bought it. I get into Bond just as the Craig era bought it. And I feel like I have to, like, I guess in the case of Fallout and Bond, I have to write my own shit. I have to write my own stories in these universes just to sort of get the glory days back in a sort of way. I have to provide my own take in order to stay sane, because I don't always approve of the directions they take it. Ooh, you're gonna say he made it woke, but, well, they did make it woke. Unironically, No Time to Die is evidence of that. The latest Bond novels, On His Majesty's Secret Service, which is like this some shitty novel written by the guy who wrote James Bond, like Young Bond, which is like, it wasn't good. Like, while these are always like, there's always a political element in the Bond films, it just wasn't good. It wasn't true to form, and it was obviously motivated by spite. This is like, I'm trying to keep this out of passion, and I wanted to continue because for all of the, of course, faults and all the dislike towards the character, I do think there's a lot left. Oh, I always get into things long after the Golden Age. Same. It keeps happening to me, man. But yeah, there's this sort of prevailing attitude. James Bond isn't a hero. He's just a guy. He's just a fuckboy who kills people. He's just a hitman fuckboy. Well, yeah, he is. But there's more to the character than that. There are people who exist in the real world like him, good or bad, both in like. And you shouldn't be idolizing him, but you shouldn't be taking, you should be envying him where he should, pitying him where he should, criticizing him where he should. And I think that's the beauty of being a literary character. That's the beauty of being a literary character. You can do a lot with that kind of character, not just necessarily as a fish out of water in the modern world, not adapting him to the modern world, keeping him timeless, keeping him an artifact of his era, while like evolving him into the same character that we've seen from Fleming, from the movies, from even the games, even from derivative novels like John Gardner and Raymond Benson. I haven't read the John Gardner and Raymond Benson ones. I've only written the ones Anthony Horowitz. Where is that? This to me, like, I read this in high school. This to me was proof that the Bond series could continue. While it wasn't the best, I certainly enjoyed reading it because, well, it's James Bond. It's the guy that I see on the movies and TV all the time, and it's something like beautifully interesting about it. The idea, it's like set in the French Riviera, which is a place that I went to Paris. I went to Paris on vacation as a kid. It wasn't the best. It was cool, but it wasn't the best. And it could have been, and like looking at the situation there, it could have been a lot better. But it's set in the French Riviera, which is the part of France that I do want to visit. It's set before Casino Royale. It has a hot lady that like could easily fall in love with, and it has a lot of elements from the original Fleming series, and I feel like updating and modernizing is in bringing to current times, not necessarily making it evocative of the modern era, but in its own way. These novels were always transgressive in a way, and I think keeping it a little bit transgressive and out of its time aids so richly into how it was. It got flack from the right and the left. Mostly it's the left nowadays. But it's an artifact that should continue. I do feel like it is an artifact that should continue, and that's why I wrote this, anyways. And but as proof that the series could stay modern without losing the elements of the original. And on the topic of that was like, because with all this isn't like the future is in question. Amazon reportedly in favor of Marvel style ideas to expand the franchise. Anyone who's been been a fan of something knows this is a horrible idea. Don't do this, please don't. The series should focus largely on Bond himself. Like, you're free to no, keep it restricted to movies and games. Keep it restricted to books and games or comics. Don't bring it into the mainline movies. Don't make spin-off movies or things like that. Because Broccoli is reported to have balked at the pitch, telling friends that Amazon are fucking idiots who are taking the franchise hostage. She has reportedly expressed her disinterest in continuing to work with Amazon for any Bond films. Emotionally difficult for his family. I think he's gay now, actually. Gemma Turton. People would find it too outrageous for a woman to play 007. And that's how they should be. They made Q gay. They made Moneypenny black. It's not like necessarily entirely bad things. It's just it feels a little bit intrusive. I really, well, I mean, my favorite character of the character M, who is Bond's boss and commander, is the female Judi Dench, who she's 90 now, and I still have a crush on her because she's so assertive and the ideal girl boss. But I think it doesn't need necessarily to be reworked. It still can be characters can be recast. It can be modern, but keep the character at its core the same. That same reactionary, tired of the world yet still loves living in it character of hardened military man Bond, hardened spy man Bond. That without that you lose the spirit of the character, and who's still he's tough. He's literally a professional assassin, but but at least unlike Craig, introduce elements where he enjoys his job, because what kind of person wouldn't like to enjoy getting out of this? And I think going back to why Bond seems all dour and depressing all the time. It almost seems like a noir. Well, I mean, he gets to travel for his job. He gets to travel for his investigations and his missions and his wet work. And who wouldn't like to do that? I guess if you're into that sort of thing, who wouldn't like to do that? A major appeal of being exotic locations for readers and viewers who only this was early in the jet age, when international travel wasn't a big thing yet. These were the early travel novels. These were the early when Dr. No was set in Jamaica, Live and Let Die is set in the Caribbean, Thunderball is set in the Bahamas. Places that they British people and at times US people haven't been to. People like it when their place of birth, when their home countries are featured in a Bond film or in a Bond book. Everything must be slop in current year. Everything has to be slop, but I can prove that wrong. It can be modernized without being. It can the series can be modernized without being forced for the imaginary modern audiences. And I'm writing this I'm trying to write it as proof. But yeah, and on that topic, who will be the next Bond? None of these guys. Well, one suspects even if you tie down the producers down to a metal table and threaten them with a laser, they still keep stum, as such has been their pact of silence over the super secret Bond casting process over the years. I think it was said before by Roger Moore that more men have walked on the surface of the moon and which that have played like more people have gone to space than have played James Bond, and I think that's literally unironically true. Yeah, over across a lot of media, there have been a lot more astronauts than there have been people who were involved as the starring role in this series. Well, I mean, everyone knows my ideal picks. None of them are here. No, and like I don't think like this isn't me being racist. I like a black Moneypenny. I like a female M. I don't think a black guy should be Bond. I don't think I'm Asian. I'm not white. I don't think a non-white guy should be Bond. It just doesn't. It's not true to the character. It doesn't fully align. Just as I think an American shouldn't be Bond, or even a Canadian shouldn't be Bond. They should mainly draw from countries that have elements of British accents. New Zealand, Australia, Ireland, the UK, that sort of thing. They shouldn't stray from there. It should be a white guy from there, and that's how it should be. In my Joe Alwyn, I don't know these guys. Joseph Quinn. Oh, they're trying to get a big Nick Holt. No, Nick Holt. He's the new Lex Luthor. He wouldn't be the new James Bond. Luther Ford. No, no. Callum Turner. No. Aaron Peart. No. Jack Lowden. No. We know what's going on. We know what's going on. Henry Cavill. No, no, everything must be slop. Everything must be Marvel, DC, Cape shit. Oh, Copperhead Snake says, no, no, everything must be slop. Everything must be Marvel, DC, Cape shit, DEI, Grey Goo, indescribable mass. Yeah, I don't want to take that direction. But I mean, speaking of like Cavill, I mean, said earlier this year he may be too old to take on the role. No, he's not. No, he's not. He's still there. He is still my front runner for like the next choice for Bond. Unironically, if you've seen him in The Man from U.N.C.L.E., which is a great as like a Bond stand-in where he plays a CIA agent instead. Like he is ideal for the next one, for the next role. In my opinion, with Bond as Cavill. Another pick is Aaron Taylor Johnson, who was in Kick-Ass. He was in a lot of other movies. He was in Bullet Train, which I really liked, which was like, and I think he could have been Bullet Train was his proof of concept to be Bond. I think he could work. I think I like Aaron Taylor Johnson. Yeah, we should get back one of these. James Bond throws up at least once due to trauma. Trauma at least once per book. No racism, more racism than you're expecting, even for the 50s. No, seriously, James Bond inexplicably despises Bulgarians. Even at one point, Bond writes a letter in his own pee. Many comments on the nature of American culture, including the exotic pungency of American road signs. Extended passages of James Bond being racist to various ethnicities you didn't even know he could be racist towards. Again, do I necessarily approve of these kinds of opinions? No, but I think they're funny. I don't think they should always come back, but I think it keeps the character interesting if the character has always been this sort of reactionary, tired of the world but loves living in it. Like that's like what I said before. And and I don't think any of these like fucking like we're like any of these choices listed here would be a good thing. No. Oh, there we go, Aaron Taylor Johnson, this guy. I think that like if you cut his hair, I already know like if he cut his hair, if you've seen him in Bullet Train, he would be a great pick for Bond. That was like he's my second choice. I would be genuinely happy if he came in, and no one else. No one else. Like in the past, I would have said, oh, maybe Tom Hiddleston, but I don't like him anymore because a certain member of FaZe Connect likes him a little bit too much. I haven't been silent on that, but I shouldn't go there. I shouldn't go there. Stop making beef with FaZe Talents. You love that company. Don't do that. Anyway, but I think he's an ideal next choice, and we have and besides that, I feel like besides we have two perfect candidates, we don't have anything else. We don't have anyone else. Like if you choose anyone besides Cavill or Taylor Johnson, you've lost the plot. You've lost the plot. You don't understand anymore who it is. But I would like the character is supposed to be non-descriptive of the actors, and when reading, it's interesting because in the in reading Jack Ryan, well, like between Jack Ryan, who like you have an imagination of what kind of characters play that role, and here when you read the original Fleming books, you really get a sense of who he is. It becomes this nondescript, non-evocative of the actor. Non-evocative of the actor. It sort of fades into the background. After all, this was his image in the books. While I don't think he's very good looking. I don't think he's very attractive, especially in the modern day. I think the description works. The description works. Yeah, he had his own description in writing the book. When Fleming wrote the books, and I took that in. I didn't assign him to any major actor. Anyone who thinks racism explicitly black, white, yellow, red, polka dot should read some of H.P. Lovecraft's letters about Russians, Irish, and Welsh. Well, yeah, we were really racist to Russians and Russians and Chinese during the Cold War. As elements of how it is, we were really racist to Germans and Italians and Japanese during World War II. Like, that's just how it is. That's just how and we're racist to Russia again because of the war. People are racist to a lot of other countries. It's changes of the times. I don't think racism is a good thing. Especially since I'm, not white. I'm not white. I don't think racism is a good thing. But I think as it pertains to the character, while I don't think it should be a permanent hallmark of the character, I don't think Bond being a modern SJW should be a thing either, which was a thing in On His Majesty's Secret Service, which was a novel that recently came out and was really bad. But that's not what I want to dwell on. But I love this franchise, and I want to play with it. I want to do something with it. After all, and I think how it's affected me. I mean, it's affected me in a lot of different ways. It partially got me into guns that weren't like stuff like let's see Deagles and Uzis and like M16s and AKs in games and movies. This where is that? This novel, Hitler's Angel, which was written by the screenwriter involved in GoldenEye, which was here. This introduced me to the Walther PPK German pistol series, and I can't help but think of it as perhaps the most beautiful pistol in the world. This one right here. I know people hate it. I know people hate the character for the same reason, but you know what? I can't help but like it because, not just because I grew up with it, but I can still appreciate the beauty of it now. And I think it's interesting. It got me, there isn't a lot of series when it comes to male fashion, especially. It's something I've wanted to get into, being a guy. I want to dress classy. I want to dress cool. I want to improve my look. And Bond has been my reference guide for a lot of these. I always liked formal wear. I actually liked formal wear as a kid. I like wearing a suit. The ideal gentleman and the ideal hero should be having a gun and a suit to conceal it. That was my idea of an ideal a cool guy hero. To be entirely clear and honest, and that's And that's why I like the series. This is the PPK, and I don't care if people hate it. I don't care if it's too small. I don't care if it's not powerful enough in the modern era. It's a beautiful gun. It goes in beautiful suits, carried by a beautiful man. But that's how things go. Bond has been my reference point for a lot of elements of the things that I wear, and I think that's I and I think that's that'll come later. And I think that plays a big part into like why I dress the way I do. It's had a pro and I am breaking kayfabe here. I am breaking kayfabe here quite a bit by I am breaking kayfabe here quite a bit by revealing the origins of my name. But I've heard of Callie do it. Like she explained why she's called Calliope Mori or Mori Calliope. But I chose the name Felix because of where is that kid? Where is he? I partially blame this character as the reasoning behind me picking this name. Besides it sounding cool, but like for myself, for this, he is why I am named Felix. This character who was Bond's CIA counterpart in the like CIA sidekick in the movies and in the movies and the books. He's why, and I'm not ashamed of that. Bond really does have a timeless look, a classic look, timeless even. He's out of his time while being timeless. And I think there's always that classy element that comes with the character being in a suit all the time. That comes with the character being in a suit all the time. That's like it's become the suits are still the definition of what gentlemen's wear in the modern era. And I think that's why no, that's why the silhouette is so interesting. He's evocative of an entire era. He shouldn't be a character to be idolized, but he should be a character to be mimicked because he's supposed to look good. He's supposed to look good in that way. You're supposed to like in the way of confidence, in the way of assertiveness of the situation, living on the edge but never breaks his cool, that sort of thing. And again, there's a lot you can do with that sort of character. What kind of things might push him to the edge? What might make he lives on the edge? What might push him over? He's always in control. What might make him lose control? And that sort of ideal of such a character to be written. And that's why I'm unashamed. That's why I'm unashamed of liking the character. And I think if you, as I mentioned before, if you look back into the origins of the character, the quintessential origins of the character, the quintessential origins of the character in the 1950s. World War II just ended. Britain in Europe is in ruins. There's a new Cold War happening as the Soviet Union encroaches on everyone. And there are still Nazis running around there, and like the threat of communism is here again. What better a person to take charge of the situation? And what's more, Bond came at the height of the decline of the British Empire. India just left. The UK was losing its colonies left and right. Canada, Australia, New Zealand, India and Pakistan were all seceding from Britain. And he is really evocative of that British reactionary who looks at like the state of his nation and wonders, and like who both loves and hates it. He hates he like who does his job in order to be away from Britain, yet still loves it all the same because he wants to protect it. And not just for Britain, even like he can still be liked by American characters. He is the ideal, like NATO's ideal action hero, because he is the NATO standard hero, so to speak. He carried the PPK and the Browning and the high power. In the movies at least, he fought for an Allied intelligence service. he was on the side of the Allies in like he was part of NATO in the Cold War. He was in the Allies in World War II, and that sort of ideal. And as the world is descending into war and chaos in real life and like political turmoil in real life, the perfect kind of escapism is one similar to our like can be one similar to our own, but somehow there is a man who is in control. Nothing ever happens because he's the man responsible for making sure nothing ever happens, to make sure the world doesn't get further into the deep end. That's his role in the world, to keep like he gets bloody so the world stays clean, and that sort of character constantly resounds with me. Characters like like Jack, like Captain Price in Call of Duty, I feel like wouldn't be wouldn't be as the way he was without being without some level of influence from Bond, even if it's not expressed, even if they're different characters fundamentally. I think it's all still there. Both as a credit to the men who are like to the glowies who don't glow as hard, and the people who are indeed trying to be like keep the world stable and a bit sane, like as a tribute to those kinds of guys. Maybe they shouldn't be idolized often, but and indeed, Bond was written as a tribute. Bond was written as a tribute, both as Ian Fleming's self-insert and as an honor, like in honor of the kinds of people that he met while working for the British Special Forces during World War II. And again, like the sort of element as the world falls apart, you can rely. There is someone you can still count on, and that's the kind of idea with these movies, and I like that. I like that a lot. Previously, when I was after I had seen No Time to Die, I wrote an attempt at making a new IP, a new story, like unconnected to Bond but heavily inspired by it, and I eventually abandoned that because I felt like I wasn't doing well enough with it. There was too many immature. I wasn't handling it correctly. I got pretty far in, but I wasn't handling it correctly. I didn't know how to start it. I didn't know how to finish it entirely. A lot of contrivances had to happen, but it's come back. I feel it's come back in this vein, and this recent resurgence in interest in the Bond series is evidence of that. It is evidence of like people want a new Bond movie. People want a new Bond movie, including myself, and I've taken it upon it myself to write it a bit. And I am gonna do a bit of glazing for a friend who was early on support. Oh, I'm getting a call. I'm sorry. I'll be back in a second. All right, guys. Just got a call from Dad. I can take care of that. But speaking of which, he did like. Speaking of Dad, who, after all, I do credit my initial autism into this too. He is responsible for sending me this article, which is Collider. Yeah, taking off in the early 1960s when international travel was highly uncommon for the average consumer, the globetrotting James Bond series was quick to become a cultural phenomenon. The series' longevity, over 6 decades and counting, is something most of the closest competition can even come close to matching. This was the original IP. This was the original IP. This was the original franchise multimedia. It's something that most of the closest competition can't even come close to matching, but the series was reportedly at something of a stalemate. It's Created on the page by former naval intelligence operative Ian Fleming, the gentleman spy James Bond is a product of history, a sophisticated professional killer with vices. Nevertheless, he is a hero. It is entirely a miscalculation to suggest he's an anti-hero or anything like that. I mean, I disagree. He isn't like, again, I wouldn't find him someone to idolize, but someone self-insert in a bit of self-indulgence. Does he always make the best decisions? No. But is he always the best person? No. But you know what? He's still an interesting character fundamentally, and I would suggest he is the quintessential British anti-hero in a way. He still fights for the right thing in the end, but he's not entirely the best person in doing it. Not in the way of like being an asshole like Deadpool or whatever. That's like entirely unclassy. But it is as it is that the audience is eagerly rooted for the better part of the century. But that is something that I do feel like that should be maintained. Bond has also been dissected over the years, and something needs to evolve more and more. The simple reality, and this is important, so listen up, is that the James Bond franchise has always worked best when it maintains an element of male fantasy. Bond is a bloke, well, whatever that means in Britain. These are movies for blokes, and so anyone can enjoy them. This is why I suggest, like, if you want to kind of gauge the kind of like a woman you're in, like the kind of like women, if you want to get a guy interested in you, take him out to your date should be a Bond movie. Like men, if you want to gauge what kind of person your girlfriend is, have your date be a Bond movie. So anyone can enjoy them. There are all kinds of movies that serve all kinds of purposes. Should the next incarnation of Bond fully lose track of what the character made appealing in the first place, a line that was arguably already crossed and was least approached during the modern downbeat Daniel Craig era, maybe the series could be doomed. Here's hoping it isn't, though the franchise is in a precarious place, more so than it has been in a very long time. This is enough to change the fact that it's the greatest film franchise of all time. That I cannot argue. This is fun, this is escapism. It can strive for more than that, but that's the core of it. The following is the definitive ranking of every James Bond film, worst to greatest. Exhaustive ranking of all 3 non-Eon productions. And that includes all 3 Neon. I'm not going to include this one. Either. Well, it's not entirely bad. It stands on its own as a movie. Is there anything Never Say Never Again, which is a remake of Thunderball, which was a remake of Thunderball, but it had its own style, it had its own aesthetics. This is possibly the only non-Eon production of the movie that I could take seriously, and it doesn't take itself the most seriously. I have problems with it, but I wouldn't not watch it. I wouldn't hate it. Casino Royale, for Casino Royale 1954, The Man with the Golden Gun. It's funny because this one, perhaps the only one that floats with being an actively bad motion picture. Second Wind, aggressively mismatching competing tones, often it's just plain tacky. But you know what? It has some good elements. This had one of the best Bond villains of all. Like, I don't think I should. I'm gonna be doing my own ranking, possibly in either in this stream or in another one. But as much as shit as this movie is, which is, it's saying something because like it doesn't always get things right. I'm trying to remember the opening scene of this, but like the ending where he meets Scaramanga. This is Sir Christopher Lee. You might know him as Saruman or Count Dooku. He was a Bond villain, or Dracula even in the olden days. But he was a Bond villain too, and I think he plays one of the best ones. Of course, the Man with the Golden Gun boasts one of the series' best villains. Best villains in Christopher Lee's Francisco Scaramanga. His personality and presence eat the movie around him whenever he's on screen. The silver lining of Eon Bond's dour ninth outing is that producers put extra effort in the following film. But it's still beautiful. I watched it, like, my dad got a DVD from this in the library when I was a kid, and I still liked it. It wasn't a good movie, but I rated Moonraker a bit worse, but it wasn't bad. And it's heavily full of Moorisms, but I like it. And something that's understated a bit is like this whole thing where like Bond gets invited into the villain's lair. He gets challenged, like, and what leads to this duel here is Bond's duel with the man with the golden gun is is this whole thing where Francisco Scaramanga goes, "To you, Mr. Bond, we are the best," and he said, and like Bond says, "You're full of shit." He basically, like, in the most PG rated way he can, like Roger Moore's line was, "There's a four-letter word and you're full of it," and that's like it's so understated, because I feel like Moore, like, while Moore, like, is close to the bottom of my favorite Bonds, I feel like he knows how to play the character when he can. He's there to have fun, but he can, in fact, play a character when he can. Skyfall deconstructed Bond and the Bond movie formula to an overall great effect, and perhaps more importantly to a record-breaking box office. It left the Bond series in Craig's era of something with a clean slate with a fresh cast of characters. Unfortunately, the follow-up to Skyfall is obsessed with callbacks. The spectacle, including a simulated one-shot opening, the biggest fireball in film history, impresses, but the most frustrating factor in here is now how much Spectre overreaches. Continually, a narrative of the Craig era could have worked if it went somewhere worthwhile. The ham-fisted romance is none of a non-starter. The Bond and Blofeld lark, or lack of one, is catastrophic. Long-lost brothers, really, if it feels like Bond is imitating the MCU, I don't think that was a good element. Like, but it could be interesting because I like Christoph Waltz. Like, Giancarlo Esposito is like Giancarlo Esposito. He's basically casted to play Gus Fring in every single other role that he does. Christoph Waltz has to play SS Captain, Waffen SS Captain Hans Landa in every single role that he does. But I think it works here to an extent. He tries to be a good Blofeld. He really does. He really tries. And I think while I don't like Craig as a Bond, I feel like it's not horrible. I can still find something to like. And while the biggest explosion in movie history is ultimately wasted, I like it because of the cinematography. Spectre is one of the, like, is it lacking? It doesn't have a good script. It doesn't have a good play action. It doesn't even have the best action scenes. The opening is still amazing. First off, in Mexico City, it's still, like, this was the first Bond movie that I saw in theaters, and the opening was indeed such a spectacle. And this, like this sort of sepia muted, like this forced muted sepia tone, like, even like everyone is critical of the noir sepia filter, and I loved it. I am a sucker for cinematography, and as much as I don't like Daniel Craig, or I don't like Daniel Craig's movies, his movies plainly have the best cinematography in the series, and I love that. Quantum of Solace. I'm not gonna defend this one because it's not like the only good part of Quantum of Solace is the opening scene. The only good part of Opening Solace is the opening car chase, which inspired the opening of All You Need Is Forever, because I took a lot of inspiration from Quantum of Solace's opening car chase. Should this have been a continuation of Casino Royale? I'm not going to defend Quantum of Solace because I think even then the cinematography is bad. It's only the opening. I don't think the song Another Way to Die is that bad. I still listen to it. I still love it. I still love the opening scene, but I hate the rest of the movie, and that's when I sign off. Mark Forster's self-conscious direction is unmitigated disaster. This was written during the writer's strike. Remember, Lee did actual spook shit during World War II. Men don't scream when you stab them in the chest. Yeah, that I did remember that. I saw that Lord of the Rings interview with I did see that. I remember that Lord of the Rings interview when he said like that's not what Saruman would do. He wouldn't scream, he would gasp. And that is something I did take inspiration for. That notion also in All You Need Is Forever. It's just not shown yet, I guess. And I remember, because I think it's interesting because Lee himself plays Scaramanga, Bond's sort of evil archetype, counterpart when Lee, who was related to Ian Fleming, I think he was his second or third cousin, or he was his half cousin or half brother. They Lee was in fact an inspiration for Bond himself, and I think that's terribly interesting. Like Lee himself, like it's like with Sean Bean in Goldeneye, where Sean Bean was considered to play the role of James Bond. Of course, I think Pierce Brosnan was better, but like Bean could have been spectacular in the role, but he was very good as Al Trevelyan. And we're of casting actors that could have played Bond as villains, and I think that's a good trend. Die Another Day. Mojito? I'm sorry, that's one of my underrated favorite parts of the movie. Just like the US's special relationship with the UK, I have a special relationship with Die Another Day. It is it a good movie? No, it's not. It is 90s. It is possibly the closest Bond can get to 90s slop. But I still enjoy it because 90s slop is better it can be better than 2000s connoisseurship. This was Die Another Day came at a time like it came at a time like why like this movie is retarded. You have this giant laser satellite that kills everything built by North Korea. You have this guy who changed this North Korean general, this North Korean colonel in the military who faked his death, changed it and altered his and did whiteface for so long via gene therapy that he became this Nordic British billionaire for some reason, for reasons I don't know why. But you know what? This was the antidote. This was my antidote to the poison that was No Time to Die. Surely, like, Bond dies in No Time to Die, but he dies another day. And I think, like, I don't hate the car. I like is it stupid in a lot of ways? Is the invisible car stupid? Yes, it is. But it's like this came at a time when Austin Powers and it preceded Kingsman and Johnny English, and it was alongside Austin Powers as a parody of itself. It was shameless. And you know what? It was a cartoonish attempt at everything the Bond series was. But it still worked. For me at least. Because it reminds me of a time when Bond movies could be less serious, when you could have Halle Berry, and also, I think say what you want about Halle Berry, she's not my favorite actress. I think she looks spectacular here. I think she's great here as this spunky tomboy American, and I love that. I really love that element. It's great. It's great. I am in fact defending Die Another Day. Also, fucking kick ass opening scene. One of my favorites. On the hovercraft chase in North Korea, it's great. No time to this one is a bit complicated because I've already ranted enough about No Time to Die. But I think cinematography wise, there was so much potential for it has so many flaws. It was written by Phoebe Waller-Bridge, so one of possibly my most hated writer in Hollywood. Despite all that, it was written by it was directed by it was the result of Barbara Broccoli kowtowing to Craig's wishes to ruin his own character, and it was full of unironically for its time, woke and shit like that. It was DEI slop. It was because oh, you might cringe at the buzzwords, but there's no other real way of putting it. But yet, despite all that, despite my hatred for this movie, especially its ending, I still can't hate it in its entirety. The openings, and because again, I am such a sucker for cinematography. This is one of the best looking Bond movies out there. This is one of the best looking Bond movies out there. The Cuba sequences, the chase scene in I think it was Norway. The chase scenes in Norway, even the end of the movie where he assaults the base in the Kuril Islands between Russia and Japan with like everything ticking down. It wasn't like, yeah, there was like you like for all the attempts to make this a bad movie, and it is a bad movie. There are still uncut diamonds in this incredibly shitty rough. The cinematography is excellent. This visual design is spectacular. There were hints of what Bond could be in the modern world. If you've seen the El Nido bar and the Cuba gunfight, um, if you see the ending scenes and the ending action scenes, those were great. You have Bond with an M4A with an M4A1 SOP mod clearing rooms. I think it was a Mark 18. It was a Mark 18 in No Time to Die, which I love as a gun. It's one of my I've talked a lot about guns here. It is possibly my favorite. One of my favorites out there. Everyday carry, what is that? I'm trying to find the I'm trying to find it, but it was somewhere on here. It was somewhere on here, I swear. As part of No Time to Die. But like, yeah, he had Bond with an M4 doing shit, and it was like, of course he should have been wearing a bulletproof vest, but that's what he could have been doing. And having this Master of Survival go out, especially in this way, is jarring and unwelcome, and it is. But this could have represented what we didn't have, what we missed out during the Craig era, what could have evolved. And visually, Skyfall was the best of it. This is Spectre and No Time to Die could have been good, but they just turned out shit. And admittedly, I take a lot of their aesthetics and inspiration for my writing. It could have been better, but as something that could have been better. And then of course, here we are. I have tweeted about this movie before. Diamonds Are Forever. I'm a Fallout New Vegas fan. This movie, most of its action takes place in Las Vegas. And this also introduced one of my favorite cars as a kid. It's still my favorite car now, the Ford Mustang Mach 1. That, for me, that was my introduction to Bond cars. It wasn't the DB5 and Goldfinger, although it's still one of my favorites. I still think it's more iconic. This is still out there, and it's not bad. It's not bad. Though it was a financial success, Honor Majesty's Secret Service failed to register with audiences the way Ian surely hoped. What's more, George Lazenby's exit left the franchise in a further precarious situation. Eschewing all the beauty and sophistication of Majesty's in lieu of Las Vegas shot rather flatly, is the trashiest and sleaziest. No, that goes to A View to a Kill. Trashiest and sleaziest, that goes to View to a Kill. I don't like View to a Kill. Diamonds Are Forever. I cannot help but love this movie. Unironically, it's great. It is something I love. It's something I don't care if it wasn't the best movie. It's still a good movie. And I don't care if Connery was at his wit's end playing the role of Bond here. It's not a good movie, but I can't find anything wrong with it. I love Diamonds Are Forever, and I remember as a kid, this was one of the first Bond films my dad showed me. I couldn't hate it. I cannot hate this movie. I still rank this above You Only Live Twice as one of my favorite Connery movies. Not maybe as much as with From Russia with Love Exists. And I still prefer Diamonds Are Forever. I cannot hate this movie. I cannot hate this movie at all. Excuse me. A View to a Kill. All right. This is a complicated matter. I don't like this movie. This is the opposite. Like, this is the opposite of Diamonds Are Forever. I do not like this movie. It was also a Bond movie that I was exposed to early on at a young age, as my dad was watching it while I like did homework and shit. While I did homework, I saw bits of this movie. It wasn't a good movie. It wasn't. It was. This is like even with I don't even if I don't like Daniel Craig, even if I don't like his movies, the cinematography there is still great. I can't even say anything about the cinematography here. It's not good. It's just not a good movie. It's not an appealing movie. It twists and turns and is full of bullshit. I don't like this movie. It's possibly like my least favorite, The View to a Kill. Moonraker, alright. It's funny because at the beginning, Moonraker was nowhere near as bad as some will say, and it's important to remember this was long the single most highest grossing Bond film, unadjusted for inflation. Jumping ahead for Your Eyes Only is Eon's assembly line in light of a sci-fi film that opened in summer 1977. This was made in response to Star Wars. Again, there were a few scenes that I hate here, but I do think the inclusion of a female CIA companion who is also an astronaut is really cool. And while I think putting James Bond in space is much too far, I wouldn't do this unless it's in like an over-the-top video game or some shit or a parody. I wouldn't do this. But I can't hate it in its entirety. There's still something salvageable. The Brazil scenes aren't my favorite. The Venice scenes aren't my favorite. The other scenes like where he visits Drax aren't my favorite. But the ending, the scenes in Rio are the ones that I don't like. But as it gets closer to the ending, it unironically becomes peak. You have this was the one where since the UK didn't have its own space program, Britain calls up the prime minister calls up the president, and the US president sends literal space marines into space to fight to provide fire support for Bond and Holly Goodhead, the CIA agent, to provide. I can't remember her actress's name, but she was really good in this. But the end, I feel like for as much as I dislike most of this movie, the ending saves it. The ending saves it from being spared this ranking. It's most of the movie is shit, but the ending is great. The ending is great. Essentially a space set remake of The Spy Who Loved Me, which is in many ways a redo of You Only Live Twice. Although formulaic or highly successful, sometimes you have to give the people what they want. You Only Live Twice. Increasingly enormous productions, the first 5 and I feel like I haven't seen this one as much. It's not one of my favorites, but I think it is interesting. It's not a movie I think about in its entirety, but I will give it props for being cool. This one was the one. This was the wee Bond. This was the one that sent him to Japan, that made him disguised as a Japanese guy, and it was great. And it was great. It was I say it was great. Well, I don't think about it as much because it's not always on, and I don't think about it as much because it doesn't have as much of an impact on me. But I like the scenes. I like the Japanese Bond girls are interesting. The character of Tiger Tanaka, who was the Japanese intelligence service there. Tiger Tanaka, head of the Japanese intelligence service, was a good start. And there are 2 scenes that stand out. One is the Little Nelly, which is which was an armed auto, like a fighter auto gyro that attacked helicopters that bought at it with like 303 Browning machine, like 30-06 Browning machine guns and like Hydra 70 rockets and shit like that. And it was cool. It was like, as an aviation nerd as well, Little Nelly is beautiful, and the other one is the ending gunfight in the volcano lair, which is like kind of the basis for the idea of the stereotypical villain lair situated in a dormant volcano and that sort of thing. I take a lot, like, this is where that trope of like the evil villain lair being in a volcano came from. And that's and I think I will give it credit to that. In many ways, You Only Live Twice can't compare to earlier Connery films. Kissy Suzuki's likely the most forgettable Bond girl. The climactic assault on Ernst Everett Blofeld's volcano lair is a flat-out historic masterstroke of production designer Ken Adam. Forgets about it after a few minutes of screen time that is rather representative of Only Live Twice storytelling overall. I don't like For Your Eyes Only. I don't like how it plays out. While it is closer to okay, if you want to criticize Cubby Broccoli for shooting Bond into space, such as you're right, but everyone must give him credit for recognizing enough was enough. What goes up must come down. Moonraker's follow-up, For Your Eyes Only, was an inventive, restrained thriller that not only adapts many elements directly from Fleming. I feel like I'm not as interested in For Your Eyes Only because I'm not the fondest of the script. I'm not the fondest of the action scenes. The script is hard to follow, and to a younger me, there wasn't enough as to take away. Bond was like Roger Moore's portrayal of Bond was increasingly getting older and older, and it wasn't visually exciting as I thought it would be. There was oh, I think I have to end off now. I have to go, guys. I'm sorry. I do want to do a part 2 of this at some point. O2 Love, and thank you Copperhead Snake, and thank you Dantioch Fanboy for coming in, and for everyone who tuned in. I'll see you guys later. This has been great. This is Felix signing off. I'll do another one of these at some point, but I love it. Thank you guys.